Well, good morning, everybody. It's me, Mitch, and no, it's not Monday. This is not a Monday morning rant. Even though I do have my coffee and my cigar, it is Sunday morning. So I'm sitting out here on my porch, and I'm watching YouTube, trying to pick a video to watch, and when I got to this screen, YouTube picked one of my own videos for me to watch. I'm sitting here because I just watched a video or read a bunch of comments where I've been chastised, or other people who commented were being chastised by a number of people who say, well, you're not really a carnivore. Well, that's not really you have coffee, so that's not a carnivore diet. And then I watched a Bart K video the other day where he said, to be considered a carnivore, 70% of your diet must be animal-based. So I said, you know what? Even though so much of the information that is presented to us is biased, I'm going to use Google here. And I'm going to ask Google a few questions. Define carnivore.
Here's the definition of carnivore: an animal that feeds on flesh.
Okay. Well, it says here translations and more definitions. So let's go and see what it says. An animal that feeds on flesh. And let's say much more there. Here you go. Can you call a human a carnivore? And it says humans are omnivores. An omnivore is a kind of animal that eats either other animals or plants. Well, that's true. Just walk down the produce aisle of your supermarket and you'll see how true that is. Somebody's eating all those plants, so of course we can eat plants. Why we eat plants is another story, and I have my opinions on that. Do carnivores only eat meat? It's a common misconception that carnivores exclusively eat meat. This is the case for obligate carnivores, such as cats, that depend on meat for all their nutrients. So now we've introduced another term into the mix, obligate carnivores, and we've all heard that used. And that means that an obligate carnivore should eat only meat, but that humans are not, by definition, and just by our own practices, we are not obligate carnivores. And if we as human beings truly do get 70% of our nutrition from animal products, then we legitimately claim that we are carnivores. Why can't humans be herbivores? The ancestors of all animals, including mammals, now think about this, all mammals are believed to be carnivorous. Well, there's a new word, carnivorous, flesh eaters. However, countless animals today have evolved to become herbivores. In fact, the structure of your teeth demonstrate that humans are omnivorous or able to eat both animals and plants. Well, If that's true, that completely obliterates the vegan argument that eating any meat is not appropriate for human animals, when one of the major tests of a carnivore is whether you have the teeth. And according to what I just read, evidently all animals, way back far enough, were carnivores or carnivorous. Were humans ever herbivores? The evidence from taxonomic studies and human megafauna interaction models indicates that early Homo sapiens were not strictly herbivores. Instead, they were opportunistic omnivores with a significant reliance on animal protein and fat, particularly from medium to large size herbivores. And all that translated means early Homo sapiens ate big fat animals, especially herbivores, who are vegans, by the way. Now we get to the crux of it, because they start the politics of what defines a carnivore starts to come into play in some of these answers. Is a carnivore diet healthy? Now, before I even read what Professor Google says, you and I both know from our own experiences and the experiences of tens of, if not hundreds of thousands of other people doing N of 1 experiments, that we indeed are showing the epitome of health, eating no plants, being obligate, or at least eating like an obligate carnivore would eat. It says here, however, the diet is extremely restrictive and likely unhealthy in the long term, plus no research backs its purported benefits. The carnivore diet eliminates all foods except meat and animal products. Thus, it's lacking in numerous nutrients like fiber. Since when is a molecule of something called fiber required in any physiological, biochemical reaction in any part, especially in any cell of the human body? I have studied pathway after pathway after pathway showing how this molecule gives up a proton and reacts with that molecule in so many different pathways, from the polyol pathway that converts glucose to fructose, to the pathways of the electron transport chain that convert the food we eat and the oxygen we breathe into adenosine triphosphate. Nowhere, not on any chart, not in any chemical diagram of what's going on in the human body, is a molecule of fiber required. As Bart Kay said, the daily requirement of fiber intake for a human being is exactly 0. Yet Google says that the carnivore diet is bad for us because we are missing. And it's bad for us because it's loaded with salt and fat and difficult to maintain. So right away, this is not fact. This is a sum total of all the propaganda that's put out there. Are humans built to eat meat? In other words, there is no one ideal human body. Io and Leonard say the real hallmark of being human isn't our taste for meat, but our ability to adapt to many habitats and to be able to combine many different foods. That's from an article called The Evolution of Diet, National Geographic. Is carnivore diet bad for your heart? The carnivore diet can lead to increased risk of developing heart disease. We've talked about there are no studies that aren't biased. That even come close to finding any link between eating meat and heart disease. In fact, it is just intuitively obvious if you understand how evolution works, that anything that caused harm was selected out of our genetics and never got passed forward. If eating meat wasn't the optimal diet, not only for us, but for every one of our ancestors, going all the way back to the first animal, which even Google admits was a carnivore, we wouldn't be here today. 50,000 generations, one of our great-great-great-grandparents would not have lived. They would have gotten heart disease. Heart disease was not even a thing until the early 1900s. What Google and all of these ridiculous, illogical people that keep saying that meat is bad for you, what they don't think about is that none of these so-called bad effects happened to the human animal before basically 100 years ago, when they started demonizing meat for political and monetary purposes. It is absurd. And the further that I go down this what's a carnivore rabbit hole, the more and more of that propaganda keeps creeping into the answers. Thank you, artificial intelligence. You've proven to me that you are up to date, and have on the tip of your tongue virtually all of the misinformation being spread by fools and ignorant people. The motto, maybe, don't trust artificial intelligence as far as you can throw it. Now, let's get back to where I started this video. I started this video reacting to a comment that basically accused me of not being a real carnivore because I drank coffee. So, who the hell defined carnivore anyway? And are we talking about being a carnivore, being carnivorous, or being on a, quote, carnivore diet? I think the first person that used the term carnivore diet as a thing was probably Sean Baker when he wrote his first book. And basically, his parameters for being on a carnivore diet was you don't eat anything but meat or animal products. Almost had nothing to do with carbohydrates, because you don't find carbohydrates in animal products except small trace amounts, because human flesh has carbs in it in the form of glycogen, glucose, and some of that, when you eat the animal, you're going to get some of that. Now, we keep making new diets, and we keep changing the definition of what those diets are. Now, I remember starting out with Atkins way back in the 70s, and that was not even, it was a ketogenic diet, because I remember I used to buy those keto strips and piss on them and they turn purple. So the goal was to be in ketosis, but there was no, you have to have under 20 grams a day, because how do you really even know that? How do you know that these food labels are at all accurate? They fool with these things. They've got total carbs and net carbs. They've got rules that say if it's less than half a carb per serving, you can discount it. They make the serving sizes so small that the actual serving that any normal human might eat is going to be loaded with carbs. But if you make the servings, for example, of blueberries, one blueberry, you can claim it has no carbs. Leave it to the human race to figure out a way to play anything, especially statistics. So, for me, I don't even play that game anymore. Am I a carnivore? Am I not a carnivore? Am I a real carnivore? Am I a true carnivore? Am I a militant carnivore? Am I a sloppy carnivore? Am I a dirty carnivore? Or am I maybe ketovore? 10 grams of total carbs a day. That's relatively new. Or am I just keto, which is basically a pure carnivore adding 20 grams of carbs a day, which is not a lot, but it certainly is enough to trigger your addictions and ruin your efforts. And that's why I think that it's not about how many carbs you eat, it's about what level of carbs starts to trigger your addictions, and that's what you need to look out for, because that is what kills just about all people who try a carnivore diet or a keto diet, is that they're allowed to juggle their carbohydrates, and they're not going to pick broccoli. They're going to pick keto snacks and cookies and keto pizza crust. And those things trigger addictions, and bingo, you're off the diet. How do I know that? Happened to me for 50 years. The strictest definition of carnivore is you don't eat plants. Is drinking some coffee every day akin to eating plants? Well, there's no measurable carbohydrates in a cup of black coffee, and yet there are measurable carbohydrates in eating any solid plant food, even Brussels sprouts and broccoli. Many carnivores, people that consider themselves carnivores, drink coffee or tea and say it's perfectly okay. It certainly doesn't trigger a sugar addiction. So in my definition of carnivore, I say drink coffee. If you like coffee, drink coffee. If it doesn't cause you any problems, drink coffee. Another thing that people use to say that you're not a real carnivore is if you use a few spices, maybe a little black pepper, a little garlic powder. Again, in the average amount of black pepper or garlic powder that you might sprinkle on a steak, are there enough carbohydrates in there to even matter? And if, in the course of a day, and this is the practical way to look at it, and the message that I think I want to leave you with, is that you have to be practical about everything. Being a perfectionist, being militant in this world is no way to have to live. Sweating the carbs down to tenths of a gram makes no difference. I even had somebody tell me, you can't season your carbon steel pan with grapeseed oil because that's a seed oil, and if you do that, you're not a real carnivore. Give me a break. A couple of drops of grapeseed oil, which polymerizes and turns into a plastic-like coating, is harmless and imparts no carbohydrates or oxidative causing materials from just seasoning a frying pan once in a while. We can't sweat the small stuff. My idea of calling yourself a carnivore is you don't eat plants. Eating plants requires taking a bite of them, chewing them up, and swallowing them. It doesn't, I don't count drinking a cup of coffee or sprinkling a few grains of pepper or garlic on your meat if you want it. Relax a little bit. If you start eating vegetables, then you're not on a carnivore diet as far as I'm concerned. You're on a ketovore or ketogenic diet. And that's okay. Who cares how we label it? Whatever works for us, works for us. There's no status. We don't hand out stripes for our arms and medals to hang on our chest because we don't eat plants. There's no status to it. We should stop worrying so much about the minutia and concentrate on the things that are important for every diet or any diet first. And that is, do not eat plants, do not eat seed oils, and when it comes to plants especially, do not eat grains. You don't need fiber, you don't need carbohydrates for our human machinery to function at an optimal level. Those things only gum up the works, which is why the carnivore, quote, diet is the ultimate elimination diet and usually clears up most medical conditions because you're eliminating those foods that you eat that caused them. Proudly proclaim, like I do, that I am a carnivore, whether at the level of the definition of a carnivorous animal, the definition of an obligate carnivore, or just the fact that you are aware of what you're putting into your body and you're benefiting greatly from it. If you don't agree with me, start a YouTube channel, make your own video, send me a link at my email, and I will watch you tell me what it means to be a carnivore. With that, take the rest of the day off and eat meat.